So today I'm going to talk about anticipatory grief and the events that led up to the situation that I was in that caused me to have the anticipatory grief. So stay tuned and we'll talk about it. If you're having thoughts or feelings of self-harm or suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 800-273-8255. Okay guys, hi, I'm Leo from One Happy Widow. Just want to give a little disclaimer before I get started that today I'm going to be talking about some details of my husband's terminal illness and his death. And I know a lot of you are also widowed or know some people that are widowed and have dealt with a lot of traumatic details about other people's death that you care about, and so the details here could be triggering for you today. So if you're in a fragile state, or if you're in a place where you can't really hear about the details, you know, about someone being sick, being terminally ill, and dying, then I would suggest that you maybe pick another day to watch this video. I'm not making this to try to upset anyone or to try to have anyone relive their grief or send them into any kind of triggering, emotional state. So I just wanted to let you know that up front before you start watching. It's going to be a tough video for me to make today, and I just wanted to let you know that up front. Usually I try to put a positive spin on things in my videos, but today's probably going to not really be the case because I'm going to be sharing some really sad stuff. So today I want to talk about anticipatory grief, and I never knew what that was until after my husband died, and I started questioning the way that I was grieving and the way that I was feeling, and wondering why I wasn't feeling things as strongly as I kind of expected to. And so I learned about it after the fact, and it helped to explain a lot of things about what my mind was thinking and how my heart was feeling. And so just knowing that it was normal, and knowing why I was feeling how I was feeling, made me feel so much better about things. And so hopefully if you are experiencing this, or maybe you're going through, maybe your spouse has a terminal illness and you're kind of dealing with that right now, this might be a little bit of helpful information to you, just to at least know that what you're going through is normal, and you're not alone. So I'll just go ahead and let you know what anticipatory grief is. It kind of makes sense about what it's called, but I just didn't know it existed. It's basically when you start to grieve, it's like pre-grieving. When you start to grieve the death of a loved one before they have died. Usually it applies to someone with a terminal illness. So my husband Dewey was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and the moment that we knew it was terminal, my grief timeline started that moment. I started that grieving process right then. And so he was sick for several months, and then, so by the time he died, my grieving had already, it's kind of like a pressure cooker. A little bit of the pressure had been let off little by little through the time while he was sick, preparing for his death. And so that's what anticipatory grief is. And so it kind of lessens the severity of the impact of the grief right at the moment when they die. So it's not like I was going along my merry way, got a phone call, that everything stopped on a dime, that my husband had died in a car accident and my life went from this direction to that one in an instant. It's not like that. It was so much more gradual because, we got this news that he was sick, and then he was dying, and then had to deal with all the aftermath of that. So it's a different type of grief. So now I just want to share with you just the story about what happened to Dewey, and how we found out about his illness, and some of the details about the process between him getting diagnosed and ultimately his death, just to share the story. Over time, sometimes you forget the details, and so the story just needs to be shared, I feel like. And maybe you have some questions, or maybe you're dealing with that kind of loss and you want to maybe know what to expect. So I will go back to 2017. I was married to a man who, as typical men, have you ever seen that video about men with a man cold? If they hurt, they're big babies. And so I was married to the biggest one of them all. he was always having some kind of stomach problem, some kind of head problem, back pain, something. He was always, always hurting. And when he was hurting, he always felt like, oh, I gotta go to the hospital. I gotta go to the emergency room. And, after a while, unfortunately, hindsight's 20/20, but in the middle of it, it became kind of annoying, because I'm like, really? You gotta go we going to the emergency room for a stomach ache? And so that's kind of how things started. So it was actually Valentine's Day in 2017. I think it was like a Wednesday or Tuesday. And he asked me if I wanted him to take me out to dinner that night for Valentine's Day. And I was like, oh, it's a school night. I had to go to work the next day. So I told him, I said, don't even worry about it. Just let's just go this weekend. You can take me this weekend. It'll be fine. Later on that night, he started getting a stomach ache. He kept saying, God, my stomach hurts. My stomach hurts. I'm going to have to stand up to show you. He had this stomach pain right here. And he said, gosh, it's going all the way through to my back. Like it's hurting in the front, like shooting back through my back. And I was like, okay, whatever. You want to take some Mylanta, some Pepto, want to take some medicine? And I think he did. But anyway, he kept complaining and complaining. And finally I was like, this is ridiculous. I said, do you need to go to the emergency room? And he was like, yeah, I think I do. And I'm thinking, are we going to really do this today? Like, you're going to go to the emergency room for some indigestion? Like, for some gas? So he was finally like, I can't drive myself. Call the ambulance. And so I was like, really? So finally I said, well, why don't you just call your mom? His mom lived about 2 hours away. I said, just call your mom and see if she'll come and take you. So he did. He goes to the hospital and I just went to bed. Like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. I get the phone rings. He's like, I need you to sit down. And he said, I might have cancer. And I'm like, you don't have effing cancer, okay? Just what is going on for real? He's like, no, for real. They did these tests on me. They called in the on-call oncologist. They're looking at some scans or whatever. And he's like, they told me, they're sending me home. They told me to make an appointment for a PET scan or, whatever, some tests with the cancer doctor, like on Monday. And I was like, really? I mean, I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? So like, just come home. Okay, just come home, go to bed. Everything's going to be fine. And, I'm still like kind of groggy and half asleep. And I'm thinking this man is going to turn some indigestion into some cancer. Like, really? So, at the time I still thought totally blown out of proportion and we're really going to go here. We're really going to do this. And then we went ahead and planned on like a romantic, time for that weekend. So we went to get massages. We'd never done that before. He went and got his first pedicure. He'd never had that before and he loved it. Annie's first pedicure. Ever. He is in for a treat. He's waited too long to get this done. He is going to love it.
I don't know. It's good so far. I'll let you know.
But the whole time it's kind of in the back of our minds, like, what's going on? Like, are we, does he have cancer? Does he really have cancer? It was just so abstract. We went to the hospital where the doctor was to get his results of his scans, where they had done a scan on his liver. And I can remember him, when he got out of the car, right before we went into the hospital doors, he just stopped and he's like, hold on a minute. And he said a little prayer and he was just like, okay, because, this is a moment that we're going to get some test results and like, it's going to change everything. Whatever these test results were was going to change the course of our lives. And so, but, we're still like pretty optimistic. We figure it's just some stupid something showing up on an x-ray and they're gonna put, he's 42, right? He doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he's a healthy young guy. So cancer was really not on our radar. So anyway, we go in there and we see the scans and they shows this scan of his liver. He said, this is your liver, and it had all these white spots on it, all these little white dots. And it looked like somebody had hit his liver with a shotgun and just, his liver was covered in white spots. And the doctor kept saying lesions, I think is the word he used, a lesion here, a lesion here, lesion here, lesion here. And so he kept talking about it. And Dewey finally said, hold on, doc. He's like, can you explain to me what you keep saying lesions? Can you explain to me what you mean by that? And so the doctor said, lesions are cancer. And I can remember him looking at it and pointing to it and saying, cancer, 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 cancer. Like everything he pointed at, he kept saying it over and over again. I can just still hear it in my ears. And I think he already knew that's what it meant, but it's his life we're talking about. So he wanted to hear him say it, and he did. So, the first thing I thought was, hell, they can cut half my liver out, right? Like, we can get a liver transplant. Like, they can cut my liver, and I'll give him half of my liver, and it will grow back. Like, I think you can do that, right? And so he's like, we're not going to talk about that right now. First of all, we got to find out if the cancer is liver cancer, like if that's where it started, or if it started somewhere else, and ended up moving to the liver, because that is... apparently that's different kinds of chemo, different kinds of treatment, different types of outcomes, if it's terminal or not, or whatever. So he was like, well, we'll talk about that later. So we go back to the actual cancer doctor and where they had done their tests, and they found out that he had what's called bile duct cancer. He'd already had his gallbladder taken out, and apparently, there's like a tube that you connect from your gallbladder to your something, your pancreas or your liver. I don't know. I can't remember. I'll probably have to look that up, and I'll put it here. But anyway, it's connecting. It's like something that connects. And he got cancer in that little tiny place. And I never even heard of that before. But by the time they caught everything, it had already spread to his lymph nodes, and it had already spread to his liver. And so we were talking about it, and the guy, the doctor says, we've got a couple options for treatment. So we're going to give you, you're young and you're strong. So we feel like, you can handle some aggressive treatments. He's like, we're going to give you some really aggressive treatments, and it's going to, it's going to be rough, but like, we think you can handle it because you're so young and strong. And so Dewey said, well, let me ask you, is this treatment you're talking about, is this to cure me? And the doctor says, this is palliative care, which another word that I had not ever heard before. But turns out that palliative care is basically care to give you the best chance of living as long as possible and to keep you comfortable, until you die. Palliative care is, comfort care, or, it's for terminal. So, and at the time, there's this timeline. My husband was on disability. He had been on disability for a while from the military. He had been let out on a medical discharge. There's a timeline that if you are fully disabled from the military, 100% disabled, and all these other things, check blocks for 5 years, then you die, then your surviving spouse automatically gets these benefits for the rest of her life. And so it was February time frame, maybe close to March time frame. Well, his 5-year mark would have been August 12th. So like 6 months, not even 6 months down the road. And so the doctor said, we asked him about how much time, and he said, well, like he said, you're young, you're strong, your other organs are healthy, and so we feel like, you can handle some stuff. So he gave him like 11 and a half months. So basically a year. Told him that he could expect to, maybe live a year. And he's like, you know what? Okay, well, let's go ahead and get this started. And he said, as long as I can make it until August 12th. He's like, Doc, you got to keep me alive until August 12th. So the doctor was like, oh, that's 6 months away. He's like, yeah, we got that, no problem. We can do that for you. And so we went back to the car. We're just sitting there. And I just started to, just break down, because it hit me that we just went into the hospital and he just got a terminal diagnosis. Like, got a year to live. That's it. And I'm thinking about the kids. Like, my kids are young. We have 4 children, like the youngest kid is 6. And, like everything's flooding into my mind or whatever. And I'm the one that's crying, and he's sitting there. And I remember, and I was, laying my head on his shoulder in the car. And he said, don't worry. He said, I'm gonna go meet Jesus. Like, that's all that he said. Like, he wasn't even crying. He didn't act like he was upset. I don't know if he was in denial still, like that was going on. I don't know. But I'm the one, going crazy and crying and whatever. And so I guess that's the moment. That was the moment, would have been equivalent to if you get that phone call that, your husband has died in an accident or something. And so that was probably like the pivotal moment, probably when my grief timeline, started. And so I remember that ride home from the hospital, and we're just looking around at things, and you see everything totally differently. Everything has different meaning. You attach everything to the fact that you have a sick husband and he's dying. And everything is now it's like a clock turned on, and it's ticking now, and it's ticking down, and it's ticking down. And so it's hard to explain, but like you look at everything on a timeline and it's different. And you pretty much don't ever look at it the same way again. And so we went home, and we decided that we needed to tell the kids. And all this stuff happens like over days and weeks. It wasn't like this happened and then minutes later. So it all happened over, course of some time. And so we decided we didn't want to tell all the kids at the same time, because their ages were different. The youngest one's 6, the oldest one's like 20 or 19, and we wanted to tell each one of them in a different way that would best meet their age appropriate needs emotionally. And so we decided to tell the 2 oldest girls together, because they were both the first one was like 19, the second was 14. And so we decided to tell them together. Well, the first thing that we did was we took them all out to eat to this restaurant called Smoky Bones. We'd never been there before, and we have not been there since. So because we took them and we're like, we're going to take you guys out to eat, and then when we get home, we got some important news for you. And so, the girls are not thinking anything. The kids are not thinking anything. They're all joking around. We have 4 children, right? Their guess was that Mom was pregnant, and the oldest one was pissed. She's like, I cannot believe you're pregnant again, Mom. Like, are you serious? You really gonna just go ahead and tell us right now, okay? So I can just move out of the house, because this has got to stop. Like, y'all have 4 kids. You are old, and I was 43 or whatever. So they're like, I cannot believe. So they went on and on thinking that I was pregnant, and that was our news. And it really was kind of tearing me up, because I couldn't tell them why, because I didn't want to go crazy in the restaurant. Anyway, so we got them home, and we went to take them into the room to tell them the news. And so we told the oldest girls, and the second one just broke down, because she's Daddy's girl. She was like, she's his first biological child, and so she just tore her up. And the oldest one was consoling her, and I'm just sitting there, I don't really know what to do. What do you do in that case? How do you act? I have no idea. Like, when you're going through this kind of stuff, you don't know how to act, and you're doing it for the first time, and hopefully the last. So you're learning as you go. Nobody can teach you how to go through having a husband with a terminal illness. We brought in our son, who at the time was 12, I think, and he's on the spectrum, okay? He has Asperger's, and so he doesn't process emotions the same way. He doesn't show emotion the same way. He feels it. He just doesn't know how to express it, And so, we told him Daddy has cancer, and we didn't tell him he was dying. We did not tell any of the kids he was dying, because, we weren't 100% sure, and we didn't know, and we didn't really we just told him he had cancer, he was real sick, and he was going to have to go through some chemo. And so, he told him he had cancer, and the first thing he asked him was like, is this due to your diabetes? Is this from your diabetes? And he's like, no, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just a fluke thing. And he just kind of told him, and like one little tear just came down his face, and he gave him a hug, and then he went back to his room. And I didn't know this until way later, but he went and ended up talking to our pastor just recently, and we were talking about stuff, and I found out that after he left the table, he went to his room, and he got on his knees, and he begged God to save his dad's life and to make it better. And that didn't end up happening. So for a while he was really mad at God because he had gone in there and begged him and prayed and begged God, please save my daddy, and he didn't do it. So he had a hard time, for a while. And since then, and he wasn't saved at that time, and since then, recently he's gotten saved, and he has finally reconciled all of that anger and stuff. But I didn't know at the time, that's what he had done, and so he was really struggling with a lot of that. Anyways, then we told the youngest one, the one who made the the cameo in the video about widowed parenting is hard, that one. So she was 6 at the time, and so we told her, and she didn't really get it, and she just got up and she gave him a hug and said, it's okay, Daddy, you're gonna see Jesus, and she didn't know what was going on. So we had told all the children, told them that Daddy was gonna get really sick from the chemo, because we thought maybe his hair might fall out or something like that. But anyway, so then we just had to prepare for what was coming. So I went to work. Oldest one took care of the other kids. Mother-in-law came and took care of him. She took him to all his chemo treatments, as a matter of fact. I never even went to a chemo treatment. I think he only ended up going to 3 or 4 anyway. But first chemo treatment wasn't really all that bad. He was like, okay, if this is chemo, I can do this. Like, I got this. And then second chemo treatment was not the same. His cancer was stage 4, and it was 100% or 90, whatever. I mean, it was terminal. There was no hope. There was no chance that he was going to survive. The only question was, how long is he going to live, and how is his quality of life going to be until he dies? And so I was trying to put on a strong face for him, but he said, I was trying not to cry in front of him because I was afraid if I cried in front of him, that it would remind him that he was dying, and that, it would make him feel bad and make him feel guilty for leaving me and all that stuff. And so I did not, except for that one time in the car, I really didn't cry in front of him. And I told him that one time, and he finally said, well, I'm glad you told me, because I was wondering why you never cried about it in front of me. He said, I just thought it wasn't really bothering you very much. And I thought, holy crap. So I was so glad that I told him, and it set his mind at ease, at least, that the reason why I wasn't crying was because it wasn't because I didn't care. It's just because I don't know, I just didn't know how to act. And like, how is crying going to remind somebody who's dying that they're dying? Like, as if they don't already know? It's kind of like asking a widow about their spouse might remind them that they're a widow. Like, not possible, okay? They already know. You're not going to, you're not going to make them remember something that they forgot. So we decided during spring break, it was like March, April time frame, that we decided to go to Tennessee on our last family vacation. He already had he got a port in his chest, so they could go ahead and give him his chemo directly into that port. And so we went there, and we went to a water park, and he was walking up and down steps and stuff. He was a trooper. He hung in there for the whole trip. We took a lot of videos and pictures, and we just had a grand old time.
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, y'all going down. They're going down.
And he started to deteriorate pretty quickly after that. And so for the first 2 months after his diagnosis, he was kind of weak and hurting, but then the next, he only lived 4 months.
We'll be back.
That's so nice.
Let me see, is that one? Is this?
That's so nice.
Is this your phone, honey?
Yeah.
Okay, it must be
Hey,
Laura's.
Daddy, I love you. Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead and give him a hug. He probably can't talk very well, or he might not be able to say anything, but he's got his eyes open, and that means he knows you're here, and he can hear you. Okay? There you go. Anything you say, he can hear you. Okay?